Angel Carter Conrad, welcome to Live from Bed.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I mean, I just finished watching The Carters again, and I know that you just finished your press tour for it. I guess this is your last stop.
Yeah.
How does it feel to continuously have to relive this and recount all these somewhat painful memories?
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's been an emotional experience, but
Yeah.
obviously very healing at the same time. I feel very grateful to be able to put pain into purpose with this documentary. And honestly, I think that working with the Kids Mental Health Foundation over the last few years since, Aaron passed away has been such a gift because I've been able to put that grief into something so positive. And, I always tell people it's losing a twin, it hits you differently. It really does. So I'm very grateful that I've been able to refocus my energy onto something so positive.
Because, I mean, as our listeners may or may not know, you lost your father and your three siblings within an 11-year period, one of them being Aaron Carter, who is your twin.
Yeah.
I think so much of struggling with a family member, even one with addiction, that, that's an addict, it's hard to know if it's your story to tell or theirs. Did you ever think that this story of your family would be told?
I think that I didn't think much of it as far as like needing to tell the story until Aaron had passed away, because then it was my second sibling and it was Aaron, and he, did live his life in the public eye.
Right.
He was this incredible child star that had, given so much of himself to the world and sacrificed his own childhood and his own life, for everybody else. And my love for him, I wanted to be this vessel for him to be able to speak his truth as well. And I always say that if Aaron was in his right mind and if he was here today, this is what he would be doing. He would be giving back. He would be helping people. He would be changing the narrative. And he just loved people.
Right.
And I spoke about that a lot on the documentary.
So like I said before about like questioning who does this story of addiction or mental illness that I'm so glad you pointed out is so much of it is hereditary and passed through generations. Like your grandparents struggled, your parents struggled, your siblings struggled. Do you feel that if Aaron were alive, or if any one of the four that you lost were alive, that you'd be able to tell this story still?
I think that's a great question. And I think probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just being honest. I think probably not.
Totally.
Right. So here we are today, and, all we can do is keep looking forward and turn the narrative around and allow people a space to have some empathy and some compassion to these people who struggle with addiction and who don't want to be this way.
Yes.
And it's not that I didn't have that when they were here. It's just, as you know, it's really hard to support someone who is hurting themselves. They're hurting you. They're destructive. There's no manual on how to deal with this. And the reality is, when you do get to a certain place, how do you go back from undoing all that damage that has been done literally to your brain?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's why I love working with the Kids Mental Health Foundation, and I'm trying to set, us up as a family up for success, because we are going to, deal with the genetic component and, all of that. So I think about those things as a mother. But I love working with them because we don't say it's about preventing. It's early intervention and intervening early and having these conversations with your kids, from birth, and incorporating mental health into the family dynamic and it just being a part of the conversation.
No, I love that you talk about that, because I think if you have addiction in your family, you might not even know that it's so much of it is hereditary, right? You might not know how to explain your family to your kids, the family that you grew up with, your twin brother. I think that kind of is part of the tangled web of having someone you love suffer from mental illness and or addiction, is that you live in this duality, right? And two people.
Yeah.
You know them sober or somewhat lucid, and you know them drunk, high, whatever. And they think you're living in one reality. You know, they don't know. I mean, they do probably, but they, you know, for the most part, exist in one realm.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so hard is like, I used to struggle with that so much that the second you tell someone that Aaron struggles with addiction, the second you tell your dad, whomever, there, from that moment, I always felt that it just completely canceled out everything positive and wonderful about them. I feel like it discredited them. And I feel like especially for you with these siblings in the public eye, you are sworn to secrecy to an extent, and that's the only way that you can have a relationship with them is if you lie with them. Yeah. And that gets harder and harder and harder to do.
Well, and Aaron knew that I wasn't ever going to enable him.
Yeah.
I was Aaron's rock, and he knew that when he came around me, that I was never going to be a yes person. I was never going to make you feel any different than just being my brother.
Right.
You know, and I think that's what Aaron loved about our relationship is because he knew that with me that it was real.
Yeah.
You know, and you know this growing up in the entertainment industry, you have people around you who are yes people, who enable you, who promote bad behavior and, you know, cater to everything that you need. But the reality is what these people really want at the end of the day is realness, right? And they long for, you know, friendship and, you know, it's a very isolating industry to be in. And, you know, I always saw the contrast of it, you know, growing up and really love having a normal life. And I'm very thankful that I can go out to the grocery store and, you know, be a mom and go to school and not feel, you know, a certain way. But it's an isolating world to grow up in. And
totally.
And I think too about people pleasing, you know, that is something that comes with being an entertainer,
Absolutely.
right? And growing up in that industry.
It's your job.
Right. But it is connected to trauma as well. And that is a symptom of it. And it's something that I've dealt with as well.
Me
you
too.
know? Yeah, I'm sure. So it is connected to definitely to trauma. And it's, you know, it comes along with it. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel like to an extent, you must have felt so, I mean, I don't know what it's like to be a twin, but with Aaron, like you must have felt, did you feel the moment he passed? Like, did you feel something within you? Did something change? Like, what did that feel like?
Yeah, so that week leading up to his death was a really hard week. And he was spiraling out of control. And I was getting a lot of phone calls from people about it. And
because he was going live on Instagram.
He was on live, which he had been doing that for months and months.
Right.
But on Sunday, the Sunday leading up to his death, he had went live on TikTok and he was, you know, inhaling duster cans and he was passing out. And it was horrible.
Ugh.
And I called him a few days later and addressed it with him. Sorry, I'm getting emotional, but I addressed it with him and he tried to deny it. And he ultimately, you know, he started blaming me for he did all the things that addicts do.
Yes.
But I knew it was coming. I just knew this wasn't going to end well.
Yeah.
And he was in so much pain. And there was nothing I can do to help him. You know, I didn't see him. The last time I saw him was in a courtroom.
Right. I remember you saying that.
And it was because I was scared to be around him. I had a daughter to protect.
Yeah.
You know, he had shared these invasive thoughts with me. And I was scared of what he would do to himself or what he would do to me as well. And I was scared. And that Wednesday before he had passed away, we had a conversation about that. And I think that I was getting to a place where I was, you know, like, okay, I need to see you now. But I told him, I said, it has to be with a therapist. Like, we can't just, it's got to be, you know, we have to have someone moderate the conversation. And he just so desperately wanted to see me. But to answer your question, it was, I knew this day was going to come, and I've known it for so long because I witnessed, you know, what he went through as a child, and I knew how horrific it was, and that he was so against therapy. That was the thing. It was anytime we try to help him or have a conversation with him about getting therapy, or the times that Nick did get him into rehab, which was only 2 times actually. Aaron had, a thing to exaggerate, reality, and everything was, it was 5 times, 6 times he went to therapy or rehab. No, it was 2 times. That was it. And the times that he went, the first time he went, he stayed for 3 weeks. And he went right back out and started using drugs. He did not want help.
I really want to sit in this conversation about what it's like to love someone who's an addict, because I just don't think there can ever be enough conversations like this, because it's such a lonely feeling, right? And even the guilt that you feel, or at least that I've felt, that it's like, okay, get them help. And you're like, no, they're a full grown adult. I can't just shove them, they have to want it themselves.
Right.
And so then you're forced to live in this, like I said, this duality, these 2 different modes, where there are some days where, everything's okay and everything's fine. And there's some days where there's eruptions. And it's like, it's so hard for me, like, can I tell you my biggest fear is that when that person dies, that I'll look back with judgment on myself, that I'll be like, why didn't you revel and enjoy the moments that they were kind of okay?
And you will.
Yeah, right?
You will. Because, and each death has hit me like that in different ways. You always have regrets. There are things that you could have done differently. But that's a part of the grief process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that it shows that you have compassion and you
Right.
have, love as a human, and but the reality is that addiction is very complicated, and it is, they have to want it for themselves.
Yeah.
And in the documentary, he says that in his own
Right.
words.
Totally.
He was educating me about addiction. I mean, that conversation that we had in the
Yeah.
documentary, that was a 4-hour conversation we had leading up to his death with me and Aaron and Lori. And there were a couple conversations that were 4-hour conversations. And that was like a year before he had passed away. So we were trying to have, he had these moments of clarity.
Right.
But I had noticed, because him and I did start talking a little bit more, I just noticed, I was like, he's not there anymore. Like the way when I said I love you, when I got off the phone, the way he said it back, he was gone.
Yeah.
And he said to me one time on those conversations, he said, Angel, I buried that Aaron. He's gone. He said, he's never coming back. And I think psychologically, his pain was too painful. It was too traumatic.
Yeah.
That he had to push that aside.
Right.
And, he was a fighter. He was a really strong guy. He really was. But this was a person who was broken and abused and hurt, and was a very sensitive soul.
Well, that's the thing that I think only people who've loved addicts really understand how special they are.
Yeah.
I hate to say this generalization, but it's positive. So many of them are feel so deeply.
Yes.
And are so sensitive and are empaths and are so brilliant. Their brain power
Brilliant.
sometimes
Yeah.
is just too much, and that becomes something that they try to numb as well.
Yeah.
Because they just feel everything. And I feel like just even you talking about Aaron and Nick, Aaron obviously who struggled, but just the 2 of them performing as children, what they were performing through, the pain that they were performing through, like even that is so, him singing I Want Candy, which probably did bring him a lot of joy, but what he had to put away to be able to do that.
Right. And that was their escape. That
Right.
was their outlet at the time, but there's sacrifices that you make, and working like an adult, and having your childhood stripped from you. And, Aaron just wanted to come home and be with his friends and have those moments, you long for that. Your childhood is so important.
Oh, yeah.
It is, think about people who have gone, who struggle with trauma or depression or anxiety. It all some way shapes back to their childhood.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
So I feel like for you, there's so much probably still left to unpack. You know, I feel like through the documentary, like, first of all, how did that conversation go with you and Nick? Like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to tell this story. Was one of you more hesitant than the other?
You know, there was no hesitation at all. Nick has been incredibly supportive since day one. And I think that because he trusts me so much and we're so close,
Yeah.
you know, I've always made it an effort just out of respect for Nick. And I did this with Aaron too, for them being the, you know, musicians in the family and the entertainers. I always had a deep amount of respect for their position, and anything that I ever did that was related to the entertainment industry in any shape or form, I would always run by them and tell them, you know, and I value Nick's opinion on
Yeah.
things. I mean, he's an expert in this field, so I really trust him, and I think that trust is mutual. So there was no hesitation, and I think Nick understood everything that I was doing with the Kids Mental Health Foundation, and he understood that this was how I needed to deal with my grief. And he understood that it was really important to me to shift the narrative for our family, and you know, for everyone not to be remembered by who they were in their addiction, because these were people who we spent a lot of years with and had a lot of good times. I mean, we spoke about this earlier. There were good times in our family. It wasn't all bad.
I think that's so important. So what was the hardest part for you to revisit in the documentary, or something that you almost couldn't put in because it felt either too personal, too scary to revisit?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think there's a couple of things. I mean, it was definitely seeing the videos of Aaron in the film saying how much he loved me. That was really emotional, because it also was validating in so many ways, because he knew, you know, and I think that with so many people having opinions on our story, it's so easy for people to make these assumptions. And it's so easy to say, like, you didn't do anything, or you didn't care about him, you didn't really love him, and that's really painful, you know.
Completely.
Yeah, but there was definitely some things that one thing that we left out was all the sexual abuse that we all went through as children. I think that it's not my story to share completely, and so there's got to be a level of respect to that, but there was a lot of sexual abuse that we went through as kids that ultimately got us to this place too.
No, completely. It's kind of a perfect storm to an extent, because it's this trauma that continuously happens through the thing that is funding your family largely, you know, but also then this history of mental illness. I just love that you talk about, you know, all the people that online also that probably feel some ownership in a weird way over your brothers. You know, like, I think when you're famous, people feel entitled to you, and they feel like you
would you ever go and comment on?
Are you
someone,
kidding?
you know what I mean?
I
It's
wouldn't
like,
even comment like your shoes are
that's the
untied or
reaction
something.
I'm looking for, because
Yeah.
that's like my reaction. It's like, I would never insert myself
100%.
into anybody's family, you know, and say these things that are so horrific and so
Yes.
hurtful. You know, I think people forget that we are humans, we have feelings, and you know, if they knew Aaron at all, they would know that the real Aaron would not appreciate that.
Completely. And
At
here they
all.
think they're like fighting his fight or something, or whatever. I don't know what they think they're doing. It's something
Yeah.
that I truly cannot relate to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another layer of an already impossible situation. Being a sister, a child of addicts, it's like now you have this whole other universe. Like I said, you live in two dimensions. Like now you live in this third world that is the fame.
Yeah.
That's, you know, who they're known as publicly, and protecting that, and that love-hate relationship there must be. But I love that you talk about, like you said, how people think like, why didn't you help more? Why didn't you save him? You cannot. You can't. You cannot save a grown adult. Like, you can withhold yourself, your love. You can tell him, you can't see my daughter. You can say, you can't see me. I won't talk to you. But also you're dealing with someone who's compromised mentally.
Right.
So those things don't have the same effect as if you were just to talk to them soberly.
The thing is too, though, is that what people don't understand is that we did try to help him for many years. But why would I post about that on social media? Why would I talk about that publicly? I was trying to protect this person and preserve his public image. And, you know, because I knew that what he was showing out there to the world during his addiction wasn't who he really was. So we were trying to protect him, and we're talking years and years and years. People got to see in the documentary just a little, a little blip of like what actually we did to try to help him. But this was years of conversations and, struggles. And, it's funny because I was talking to, I work a lot now in the addiction space, and I surround myself around a lot of doctors and educators and people who can teach me about addiction, because now I really want to like really understand it and learn everything that I can. And this doctor that I work with, he was telling me, he's also an addict and he's been sober for 30 years. But he said, when they're in their addiction, they're high. They're fine.
Exactly.
We're the ones who actually have to feel everything and carry all of that weight. So we're actually the ones on the other side who struggle a lot more than the addict. Not discrediting like how hard it is to like become sober.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Oh, completely.
But the feeling of living in that pain every day.
Oh, it's granular.
Yeah.
It's like every phone call, every time your phone rings and it's that person. How do I feel today? Can I handle this conversation? Who is going to show up on the phone? You don't know who's on the other line or who's on the other side of the phone. You don't know what to expect. You don't know like if they're going to come and scream at you. You don't know if they're going to come and everything's fine and happy and you're going to have to pretend like that for a while. It's like, it's in every breath you take throughout the day.
Yeah.
It's this like, and I feel like people like just do not understand that, because I think we're fed this, addiction, they get help, they get sober, God bless, everything's fine. That's not how it goes a lot of the time. First of all, if you go get help, you can, fall off the tracks again, and then you can, it's not linear.
Well, the fight to actually stay sober is
about
almost
that?
harder than getting sober.
Yes.
And I've learned that through working in this space. It's a battle that they have to face every day, and that support system is critical. And I think in Erin's case, and definitely with my sisters as well, there was only so much that I could do as a sister.
Yes.
Because what Erin really longed for was his parents.
Right.
And for my mom to step up and my dad to step up, who were struggling with addiction.
Yes.
My dad's no longer here. He died very similar to Erin's death and had struggled with addiction forever. And so has my mom. And so I was never going to be able to fill that role for him that he really, really needed.
Right.
Because maybe he would have gotten sober if his parents did. Maybe.
That's the thing that you're left with, is all these maybes, what ifs. What if we had tried that? What if we had done that? Like I said, like it's with every breath you take. What I've struggled with so much in the past is treating that person as a person, when also like when they're high, but no one's mentioning, like you can't say it outright that, oh, I know you're high right now, or maybe you do, but it doesn't penetrate, right? It's like they're in another world. Like sometimes they don't even remember the fights that you had, where your eyes are bloodshot from crying and you go until 4 a.m. or whatever it is. And then you don't remember the next day. But at the same time, you have to hold space for this person, because you know who they truly are, and you love them. And this like hopeless hope that maybe they'll get sober, maybe they'll see the light. But it's so painful to process that, because you're like, then you feel bad about it, because you're like, am I punching down because they're not sober, they're struggling, like, but I'm mad because they said something hurtful to me, but can I be mad? I always repeat to myself, it's a disease, it's not a choice, it's a disease. But it feels like a choice.
Yeah, right.
So often it feels like a choice, because we're functioning from a non-addict brain, and we're like, oh, we choose if we pick it up or put it down, if we drink something, if we don't. It's even hard for us to understand and to be put in their shoes.
Right. Yeah. Looking back on Aaron, I think that with him, I remember in his early 20s, he would always say, I'm a man. Don't tell me how to live my life. Don't tell me what to do. You're not my mom. You're my sister. Don't tell me how to live my life.
Yeah.
And this was like the constant narrative with him. But from a psychological standpoint, I really understand it, because imagine being this child, having no control, no say in your life. And when he finally did become 18, he said to himself, I'm never going to let anybody tell me what to do. ever again. But the problem was he was an addict.
Right. Right. Did you ever go to Al-Anon? Like, did you ever find that helpful?
I did. I went to I attended a lot of Al-Anon meetings, and it was very helpful. You know, I think with all my grief and everything that I've gone through, I've found a lot of healing in other people's stories. That's been key for me, honestly.
No, because you can feel so alone.
Yes, exactly. So I know that I'm not alone, and I always try to remember that there's people out there who have it way worse than me and who have gone through, you know, way more traumatic things than I have, and that really helps keep me, you know, aligned.
Aaron was alive when your sister passed, right?
He was alive when our sister Leslie had passed away. Yeah.
Did he make that connection at all? Like that maybe like she had struggled in a way that he was struggling? Did he choose to acknowledge his addiction at that time?
He did. And I think that for Aaron, when Leslie had passed away, it was so traumatic and so shocking. You know, we had heard a little bit that she was struggling and possibly using drugs, but we had just found out about that not long before she had passed away. And I didn't know it was as severe as it was, but she did not leave a note, but we're pretty convinced that it was actually suicide.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So when they found her, they found like pills lodged in her throat, and she was in the bed with pill bottles next to her. And it definitely felt like it was intentional, but it was not ruled a suicide. But poor Leslie, she had really struggled her entire life and had gone through so much.
I know you say she like wanted to be loved.
She, all of us did, you know, all of us just wanted to be loved. And, you know, Leslie really started to show a lot of mental health issues from a very young age. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at age 10 and schizophrenia. Yeah. And my parents had her on medications for a very short amount of time. Lori actually is the one who took her to a therapist here in Los Angeles and got her on medication because her dad is a psychiatrist. So she was very, you know, educated in this department and was like, she needs to be on something. We need to stick with this. But, you know, Leslie didn't want to take her medication and my parents didn't enforce it. I think there were moments where they tried to help her, but there was so much going on within the family that they didn't. I mean, they did send her away to a facility for a few months. She went to a facility to get help, but
like many years before.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe your parents' inability to intervene, not that it's even anyone's fault, you know what I mean? It's like I said, it's such a mess and no one knows what to do because each case is so different. Each person is so different. Right. But do you think some of that was rooted in their inability to confront their own struggles with addiction themselves?
Yeah, I'm sure it was. You know, and if you look back at the generational dysfunction, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, that back then everything was swept under the rug.
Totally.
We didn't talk about our feelings, you know?
No. Being our age and trying to deal with parents that
are
fluent in hiding, shoving things under the rug.
They still do it.
It's hard.
It is hard, you know, that no one wants to talk about their feelings. But, you know, the good news is that we are living in a time where there are more resources, there are more tools. This is where social media has definitely been helpful, but also social media can cause a lot of problems in this space as well, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I always am I'm an advocate for doctors. And really, you know, I don't ever want to speak as if I, you know everything, but, you know, we do need to advocate for doctors a lot more. And
absolutely.
And that skill set, right?
Absolutely.
And being able to navigate it. So I think that we are living in a time where there's a lot more resources and a lot more tools, and parents want to educate themselves more. And, you know, I feel like people are waking up a bit.
Yeah, no, I hope so. And I hope there is, like we've talked about, space for this gray, space for these people that have, you know, I think so often people share from, in retrospect, to be like, you know, once they're healed, you know, and I understand that. But I think the more voices we have of people that are in the thick of it, you know, are getting those phone calls and not knowing whether to answer or not, you know, are wondering how to put a full-grown adult into the program or get them to see what you're seeing. Do you have blame for Aaron's death? Do you feel resentful for even the drug dealer? Like, do you feel any animosity there?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely moments of that, but it doesn't serve me anything good by living in the past and pointing the finger at anybody. You know, all I can do now is focus on today and tomorrow and helping make a change that is going to be impactful. I think that Aaron knew a lot of the choices that he was making, and he knew the consequences. You know, I mean, addicts aren't completely blind to what they're doing. He said it in the film. Yeah, right. He said it. He was like, every time I take a pill, I know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
You know? And blaming my parents doesn't do anything either. So I look back though on the generational stuff and how we can learn from history and really make a positive change. And that's why I've chosen to tell my family's story, is so that people can see that you're not alone in this. You don't have to be rich and famous to have mental health issues. Okay. So like it happens. It's everywhere. We all know someone who has been affected by this. I mean, I'm 37 years old. I know dozens of people my age who have died from drug overdoses and suicide. What we're facing now as a society, I mean, the doctors that I work with, like there are drugs out there that are 100 times stronger than fentanyl.
Wow.
Jesus. Like as a parent too, like what we have to deal with and how scary this is. Like this is a real issue.
It's a crisis,
and how do we tackle it? You know, I mean, it's terrifying to think about. And, you know, like with my daughter, I mean, someday she's obviously going to grow up and she's going to learn about her family, and I'm going to be able to show her this documentary and hope that, you know, that she sees this and knows that like this could happen to you if you make those choices too. You know what I mean? And hope that she'll make better choices for herself. But just thinking that like a child could take one pill and that could be it. Because, you know, when I never went to college and school, like was not, I was homeschooled mostly, but kids experiment and they do things, you know? So it's
a matter of luck at the end of the day. Have you ever thought, how do I explain this to my daughter without scaring her, but scaring her enough? You know, like, because I think when you're afraid of something, it almost makes you want to try it even more. Or like when she doesn't have this, yes, she has the familial history, but not to the extent that you do, like that you feel it, you know, and how do you pass that on? But even more so than that, because your mom is currently living, and I know she struggled with addiction or continues to struggle, you can explain, but explaining her to your daughter. And when you know, because she's 6 now, your daughter, like when your mom ever called when she was, or didn't call, or how did you hold space for the grandma that she loved and this other version of her that would exist when she wasn't sober?
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated, you know, and I think that my relationship with my mom has only recently, you know, evolved into this, you know, much healthier space because she's been sober for the last 3 months for the first time in over 40 years.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So to be able to witness, you know, this version of my mom and, you know, to allow her to be in our life a little bit more. Like yesterday, I texted her a video of my dog. You know, it's like, this is my dog, Izzy. And
no, that's
you know,
real.
Yeah. Yes. And it was just like this sweet moment. And, you know, we hosted our kids' mental health day on Saturday, and she called me that day and was like, I just want to say, I hope you have a really great day and I hope it's really successful and I love you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so, it's so heartwarming. You know what I mean? The fact that we can have these moments.
And to other people, that's like, okay, so like I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Because like you go your whole life almost like you have to shut off a certain part of you that needed her.
I grew up without a mom.
Right.
And I think that that's one thing that people maybe don't understand or even have to think about. But you have to remember, like with Nick and I, on top of all of the loss of like the physical being, we have lost so much more than just that. We have lost the memories, the Christmases, the holidays, you know, our parents being grandparents and seeing the kids and the aunts and uncles. I mean, we were once upon a time a family of 7, and now there's 3 of us left, but really only 2 of us who are really close, you know? there's been a tremendous amount of loss that we've had to deal with. And I think that it really puts things into perspective. And, I always tell people I'm not grateful for what happened to me, but I have a lot of respect for it because
that's so interesting. I love
yeah,
that.
I really respect it because it's made me appreciate life in such a deep way. And, these little things that people get upset about, they just really don't matter.
Yeah.
Like people are really going through way worse things or have gone through way worse things than that. So I don't dwell on the little things, and things really roll off my back pretty easily these days. And I have a deep appreciation of how short life is. And, at any moment, things can be taken away. So I just try to live my life the best I can and every day keep doing something that's going to, get me closer and closer to this goal of mine, which has become this mission to connect with people and to advocate for mental health and children and addiction and, allow people to know that we're not alone. And I think the more that people start speaking out about this, the better off we're all going to be. And we're going to reduce that stigma so that these children will grow up in a space where, if they see someone struggling, they'll want to be proactive and actually like help instead of like shying away from it. And you seeing your friend depressed and you're not calling them or checking in on them. And, they're isolating, but what you really need to do is show up for them.
Yeah.
Our children are going to live in a world where mental health is a vital part of everybody's upbringing.
Yeah.
And that is amazing.
And I really hope that it gets the recognition in the grief space that you talk about, because I think that's a huge part of it that a lot of people don't talk about. Without someone having passed, you lose something tremendously when someone you love is an addict. And there is this grief that is this flavor that doesn't really get the recognition because other people are just like, oh, well, at least you still have that person.
Yeah.
Lastly, I just want to ask you, do you believe in closure? Is that something that's part of your grief? Is that something that you longed for at any point?
I think that there's with all these passings and the way that they happen, and obviously with the struggles with addiction, there is no way to get complete closure. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I think that, again, all I can do is look forward and, I'm a very spiritual person, so I believe that closure has already happened between us and that, they're proud and, and if I can continue to lift their spirits with the work that I'm doing and to help them, and that's going to go back in time and break that generational dysfunction with all of our ancestors. And it helps the whole family. I mean, that's how I see it. Mm-hmm. So
is Aaron's child a part of your life at all?
Yeah. So I've met him and we have play dates and, he's so smart and so sweet, and he's going to be 4 in November.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's already like reading and writing. He's really brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah.
So does he remind you of your brother like so much? Is that trippy?
Yeah. And seeing him and Harper together.
Oh my God.
Because he's got this like, blonde hair and she has this dark hair like I had. So it's like seeing, me and Aaron together. But all my siblings who have passed, they all have children.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that must be kind of also helping you look forward and this, like, we got to start having these conversations so that you can be this beacon of light that will talk about it, that will say the hard thing, that will show them that they don't have to be afraid of
that was why I did this documentary initially, was because I wanted to stand up for the Carter family children. I wanted to stand up for my siblings and to show them that in life, good things are going to happen to you, bad things are going to happen to you. And it's how you choose to look at it and what you capture that's going to really define what the future is going to look like for you. So I wanted to teach them the life lesson in this, like find the good in the bad. Just capture that and focus on that and you will be okay.
I love that. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me.
This was so important.
I feel like we could talk for hours
about
this.
No, we could. Thank you. Bye, guys.